because of sickness and, that little rebout of COVID and everything. And so we lost 2 or 3 weeks in December, or just November, December into January. But, yep. All right. Welcome. We have our welcome slide. Whew, okay. There are cookies, I'm being told and shown. Cookies back on the baptistry, so if you would like to make your way back to the baptistry and grab cookies, you are more than welcome to do so. And they can't even really see on camera, so I can't go get a cookie because they'll see me go get it. But you guys are fine. You can go get cookies. Maybe. Oh, that's okay. I'm good. Otherwise, I won't be able to talk because I'll be blah, 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 blah. That's right. Nobody will want to sit in the front row and be like a Gallagher thing. Put your raincoats on. Pop, pop, pop. Well, we're going to be in Exodus 14 through 16 tonight. And we're going to be combining actually a couple of little lessons there. And so we're going to try to catch up and get on the right track where we wanted to be for the end of the year. Remember, in May, we have a Jeopardy night that we're going to have to be prepared for against the kids. And I've been talking to the other teacher. I think we're faring okay. I think we're still in this. So you guys are going to have to choose your champions to come up here and answer questions on behalf of this team. So be thinking about that. Me? So somebody said, no, I cannot be. I'm going to be doing the game. But yes, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. It is the next to the last Wednesday in May. So the 25th is the last Wednesday in May. It's the week before that. So count backwards. 18th? Does that sound about right? Yeah, something like that. So that'll be the Jeopardy night. So there you go. Tonight we are going to be talking about Exodus 14 through 16, and what this is last week we had the Passover we talked about, and we had the angel of death that we talked about, we had the plagues that we talked about just before that, and so now we have officially started the Exodus. They have pulled out of their cities, and they are making their way to go to the promised land, and the first thing that we see is the Red Sea. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, is the deliverance at the Red Sea. So in Exodus 14, it says, Then the Lord said to Moses, Tell the Israelites to turn back and encamp near Pi-hahiroth between Migdol and the sea. They are to encamp by the sea directly opposite Baal-zephon. Pharaoh will think, the Israelites are wandering around in the land in confusion, hemmed in by the desert. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them. But I will gain glory for myself through Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. So the Israelites did this. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his officials changed their minds about them and said, What have we done? We have let the Israelites go and have lost their services. So we're right back to the old thing of Pharaoh after he had lost his own firstborn, after the cry of the land was, let these people get out of here or we're all going to die. As soon as he heard that they're gone, he went, then who's going to finish building my stuff? And so he said, let's go get them, bring them back. And they'll either die by our sword or we're going to bring them back and put them back to labor because we can't lose this workforce. So he had his chariot made ready and took his army with him. He took 600 of the best chariots along with all the other chariots of Egypt, with officers over all of them. The Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, so that he pursued the Israelites who were marching out boldly. The Egyptians, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots, horsemen and troops, pursued the Israelites and overtook them as they camped by the sea near Pi-hahiroth, opposite Baal-zephon. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us out to the desert to die?" Now, again, these are the people who have just seen this series of plagues and everything and how God brought them out. But as soon as it looked like Pharaoh was coming after them again, they went, "What? We couldn't have just died in Egypt? Graveyards are full there, so you brought us out here where there's plenty of sand to bury us in? What? Why'd you make us leave? We marched all this way, and now we're just going to die. What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, 'Leave us alone. Let us serve the Egyptians'?" Well, yeah, they kind of did, but they were also kind of whining about being slaves. But they forgot about that now because they see something that they're like, "What are we going to do now? Here comes the Egyptians. We could die." And now it's Moses' fault. A couple days earlier, he was the hero, and he was great. Everybody wanted to be around Moses. He was the rock star. Now they're out in the desert, and here comes Pharaoh, and they're like, "We don't know this guy. What are you doing to us? You brought us out here to get us killed. This guy is crazy. We told you back in Egypt we didn't want to follow you." And it says, "It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert." But Moses answered the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again." I'm telling you, this is our last encounter with Pharaoh. You're not going to look at this guy ever again. This is it. His army, done. "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." I think this is something that we can look at and put into our own lives. I know this was said for a specific people in a specific time, but I think we need to have this reassurance in our own life when things are getting a little bit crazy. We have to remember that the Lord will fight for us as well, but we have to be still. We can't keep jumping ahead of God and expect him to try to outdo us. We have to be still and say, "Okay, God, I'm giving this to you," and trusting in him and following him rather than trying to lead him. That's, I think, what we're good at that. I am. Just speaking for me, I think I'm better at saying I'm following God, but I'm the one saying, "Let's go this way." "Come on, God, psst, over here. And he's going, "Why don't you settle down and let me show you which way to go?" Rather than running around like the mouse in the maze trying to find the cheese, he's like, "I know the path. But yeah, look how green this grass is, God. Come back on the path." Got to stay on the path. And that's, I think, what God was trying to show the people here of Israel is they saw imminent defeat. They saw an overwhelming force. Here comes Pharaoh with his army. There's no way we can stand against these guys. This is doom for us. And Moses says, or you could just be quiet for a moment and let God work. Just be still. This is already taken care of. But you need to have faith. You need to trust God. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Did I tell you it was time to stop? Keep moving. You got more miles to put on." Nobody said stop. He said, "Tell the Israelites, keep moving forward. Keep going. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground. I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will go in after them. And I will gain glory through Pharaoh and all his army, through his chariots and his horsemen. The Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I gain glory through Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen." Then the angel of God, who had been traveling in front of Israel's army, withdrew and went behind them. The pillar of cloud also moved from in front and stood behind them. Coming between the armies of Egypt and Israel, throughout the night, the cloud brought darkness to the one side and light to the other side. See, it's even cooler than just having the pillar of fire there. This pillar can put darkness on one side and light on the other. So he's like, we'll just leave these guys in the dark. They can just sit over there. But notice, he put that pillar and his angel between them. Israel was safe. There was nothing going to come after them. God said, I have put up this barrier. I have put up this hedge of protection. Now, you guys listen to Moses and do what you need to do. The Egyptians, they're no problem for me. They're just going to sit over here in the dark. I'll deal with them later. It says, neither went near the other all night long. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. The Egyptians pursued them, and all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and horsemen followed them into the sea. During the last watch of the night, the Lord looked down from the pillar of fire and cloud at the Egyptian army and threw it into confusion. He jammed the wheels of their chariots so that they had difficulty driving. And the Egyptians said, let's get away from the Israelites. The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt. So before the waters even came crashing down, the Lord confused them, and he gave them mechanical problems with their chariots, and he had the wheels all jamming up and everything else. And the Egyptian army went, let's not do this, because obviously God is fighting for them. And the army, it sounds like, at least most of them were going, I don't have a problem with the Israelites leaving now. Let's let them go. I'm okay with that. Let them go. They'd seen the sea dry up before them. Obviously, God is working for them. They'd already gone through all the plagues that they just had through Egypt, and now they see the sea dry up before them, and they're having all kinds of mechanical problems and everything else, and they can't pursue them. There's just this air of confusion about all of it, and they're looking at Pharaoh going, just let it go, dude. Just let it go. It's beyond us. But he demands that they go on. Then it says, then the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand over the sea, so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen. Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea went back to its place. The Egyptians were fleeing toward it, and the Lord swept them into the sea. The water flowed back and covered the chariots and horsemen. The entire army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelites into the sea, not one of them survived. So he wiped out a good chunk of everything they had for a fighting force in Egypt. It said, but the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. That day the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians lying dead on the shore. And when the Israelites saw the mighty hand of the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord and put their trust in him and in Moses, his servant. Oh, maybe we do like Moses again. You know what? We never doubted you for a minute. You're a good guy. Yeah, we knew you were going to do that. So you get this story that people have debated about and kicked around for a long time. And the main thing that has been debated is, where exactly did this happen? Where along that whole stretch of what we consider the Red Sea? Or some have even said, no, we need to interpret Yam Suf different, and it should be the Sea of Reeds, which is a little marshy area up to the north, and that's what God dried up to let them go across. Or what area is this? And the fact of the matter is, if we knew the exact locations of these cities and these locations that they talk about, we would know the exact location of the crossing. The problem is we do not know the exact locations. Now, there are archaeologists who have put out YouTube videos and everything else, and maybe you have seen them, where they show the pillar that was erected by Solomon to show the site of the crossing, or there's this pillar here, or this monument here, we found chariot wheels here. And again, the problem is there's not enough hard archaeological data to say this is definitely the site. Now, I'm also not saying those places are all wrong, but when you're looking at it from a archaeological, geographical standpoint, it's not something that we can pinpoint that easily, because we don't know the history of even some of those monuments. We believe we know some of the sites. Here's what I know. I will not limit God by saying it had to be a shallow, marshy land. Because if God wanted him to, I truly believe they could have crossed the Atlantic with a big wall of water on each side. And if that's what God said I'm going to do, he could have done it. He chose to cross the Red Sea. So for me, any place up and down that entire Red Sea is fair game. And people have said, well, you look at this, and we can go back and check this, and here's this natural land bridge that crosses the Red Sea this far down, and it looks like you could bring that many people. It very well could be. And I'm not saying it's not. That's not the purpose of this. But what I can tell you is wherever they crossed, it was a big enough feat and a miraculous enough thing that the people of Israel felt they were doomed. If this was a stream or if this was a puddle, they would not have felt doomed. They would have felt pretty inconvenienced, but if it was anything that they could have crossed, they probably would have thought, we've got a way to cross this thing. So to me, just having a more convenient excuse and saying it was the Sea of Reeds, it was this area that's only 2 or 3 feet deep, does not line up with that account. The people would not have felt that they were doomed and were going to die over a couple feet of water. The other thing is that we have to take into account is they had a wall of water on each side. Now, a wall of water could be constituted anything from, a couple feet up to several meters high. We don't know because it doesn't say it was this exact height. We do know when it came back in, it was deep enough to drown horses. That means it had to be pretty deep, because the one thing that would be even a bigger miracle than crossing a deeper spot is getting horses to hold their face underwater long enough to drown, if they could stick their head up and be fine. So you have to figure it was higher than they were. Now, if it's higher than they were, then the chariots dragging them down, you could see where they couldn't swim, or it could have been such an overwhelming force that they couldn't possibly swim in that kind of water. That I can't get into debate. But whatever it was devastating to his army. Chariots sank, horses drowned, and not just a few. Hundreds, if not thousands, of people died right there in that spot, unable to get away from the torrent of water. That tells me it was something pretty special. Some people have tried to say that it was only a few inches of water, and that's why the wind was able to blow it away. And when the Israelites got across, then the water flowed back in, and it made it a muddy, mushy swamp. Okay, again, how did you get the horses to drown? How long would you have to work with them to train them to lay in 6 inches of water long enough to die? Okay, I mean, you got to take all of this into consideration. There is some evidence that possibly it was a little bit further north than what we might think, because the Red Sea came up further before. There's definitely evidence of that. When they were digging the Suez Canal and stuff, they found where the old seabed was, still very stinking deep, but we know that the exact shoreline of the Red Sea is not where it was. Now, again, I'm not telling you that's where it happened. I'm just saying there are a lot of other factors that could play into this. But I do know it was a big enough miracle that it not only awed the Israelites, but also the Egyptians. And it was deep enough water to drown that army in, and they were not able to get out of it. And they were destroyed and devastated by it. And it's something that nobody pursued them beyond that point. It was a big enough barrier that they didn't even go, hey, you know what, let's get a boat and go across there. It was a big enough barrier that Pharaoh lost enough of his army that the Egyptians went, we're out, we're done, let them go. Pharaoh probably would not. And here's the reason that I say that is because it doesn't say he was, number one. The pharaohs did not always lead their armies into battle. They do in the movies because it looks really good. But when you have a God on earth, he's not necessarily going to go out and catch that first arrow. He would have probably been towards the back. The other thing is looking at it, and again, primarily looking at it in English, we get an unfair skew of what this is. But it does say that all of Pharaoh's army who pursued them died. It doesn't mean his whole army died. If we want to get technical, we could play that out and go back in the Hebrew and stuff. But I don't believe that Pharaoh is with him. The other reason for that is because there is no record of an untimely death of a Pharaoh in Egypt outside of actual warfare. So Probably not. I think Pharaoh stayed back and said, "Go get them, boys," and then went, "Ooh, that didn't work out so well. Let's go back for dinner, guys. Let's head home." Because I think that he stood there and watched the devastation of his forces. So then it says, then Moses and the Israelites sang this song to the Lord. We're in 15 now. I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Both horse and driver he has hurled into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation. He is my God, and I will praise him, my father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a warrior. The Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his army he has hurled into the sea. The best of Pharaoh's officers are drowned in the Red Sea. The deep waters have covered them. They sank to the depths like a stone. Your right hand, Lord, was majestic in power. Your right hand, Lord, shattered the enemy. In the greatness of your majesty, you threw down those who opposed you. You unleashed your burning anger. It consumed them like stubble. But by the blast of your nostrils, the water piled up. The surging waters stood up like a wall. The deep waters congealed in the heart of the sea. The enemy boasted, I will pursue. I will overtake them. I will divide the spoils. I will gorge myself on them. I will draw my sword, and my hand will destroy them. But you blew with your breath, and the sea covered them. They sank like lead in the mighty waters. Who among the gods is like you, Lord? Who is like you? Majestic in holiness, awesome in glory, working wonders. You stretch out your right hand, and the earth swallows your enemies. In your unfailing love, you will lead the people you have redeemed. In your strength, you will guide them to your holy dwelling. The nations will hear and tremble. Anguish will grip the people of Philistia. The chiefs of Edom will be terrified. The leaders of Moab will be seized with trembling. The people of Canaan will melt away. Terror and dread will fall on them. By the power of your arm, they will be as still as a stone until your people pass by, Lord, until the people you bought pass by. You will bring them in and plant them on the mountain of your inheritance. You place, Lord, the place, Lord, you made for your dwelling, the sanctuary, Lord, of your hands. Establish the Lord reigns forever and ever. When Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and horsemen went into the sea, the Lord brought the waters of the sea back over them. But the Israelites walked through the sea on dry ground. Then Miriam, the prophet, Aaron's sister, took a timbrel in her hand. All the women followed her with timbrels and dancing. Miriam sang to them, sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Both horse and driver he has hurled into the sea. Then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out into the desert of Shur. For 3 days, jumped ahead. For 3 days they traveled in the desert without finding water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink its water because it was bitter. Marah. Okay, there's a word. It means bitter. Where else do we see that word in Scripture? We read it not too long ago. Esther. Not Esther. Close. So close. Ruth. Who said Ruth? Ruth, very good. Naomi, when she came back, she said, no longer call me Naomi. My name is now Mara. Why? Because I'm bitter. Well, bitter is not just in the sense of emotion and attitude. It's bitterness. And so they came to this place called Mara. The reason it's called Mara is the water was bitter. Bitter is another word for it's poison. It's not good. You can't drink it. It's stagnant, it's stale, it's got funky stuff in it. There are things swimming in it and crawling in it, and you do not want it in your mouth. So this is bitter water. Do not take it. And it says that is why this place is called Mara. So the people grumbled against Moses, saying, what are we to drink? And now they've been out in the wilderness for about a month, okay? And so the food and the water that they had when they left Egypt, pretty much gone. And you say, well, they just crossed the Red Sea. Yeah, but that's salt water. That's seawater. It's not drinkable water. So here they are out in the desert. They've been gone for about a month. We're going to see in the next few verses, the next chapter. But they're running low on supplies. So Moses cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood. He threw it into the water, and the water became fit to drink. Then the Lord issued a ruling and instruction for them and put them to the test. He said, if you listen carefully to the Lord your God and do what is right in his eyes, if you pay attention to his commands and keep all his decrees, I will not bring on you any of the diseases I brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. So he says, I'll make you a deal. Here's fresh water. Take this piece of wood, throw it in there. Oh, look, the water's clean. It's pure. It's not the wood that did it. It was God. It was something so they could have a visual representation of something happening. Because I can see people going, where can I get a piece of that wood? Well, ask God, because he's the one who cured the waters. But then he makes them a promise. He says, if you will follow me and listen to me and settle down, I will not only take care of your physical needs, I will make sure that none of the diseases that have plagued the Egyptians will plague you. You'll be healthy this whole time. That's a pretty good deal. I mean, especially now, that pollen count's so high and stuff like that, there's probably a lot of people that would like to make that deal right now with God. I'll never have snuffly, runny nose for the next, mixed bit of this trip. Really? Seriously? Okay, I think I'll listen. But they don't. That's the crazy thing. God adds this to their promise. He says, I will keep you healthy. All you have to do is follow my decrees, follow my laws, follow the things I ask you to do, be obedient, and don't worry about your health. Don't worry about your food. Don't worry about your water. I've got you. I'll take care of you. Just follow. That's what I'm asking you to do. It says, then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs and 70 palm trees, and they camped there near the water. The whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai. On the 15th day of the second month after they had come out of Egypt, in the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. 15th day of the second month. When did they leave Egypt? The 15th day of the first month. The beginning of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The Friday night, or not Friday night, but the night of the 14th is when they had the Passover. They sacrificed the lamb. They had it that evening at twilight, which would actually be starting the 15th day. They got up the next morning. They took their bread troughs and they took off. So they left the 15th day of the first month, and now it's the 15th day of the second month. They have literally been on the road for 1 month, and the people are like, we're sick of it. Where's God? It says in the desert, the whole community. Now, we know that it probably wasn't the whole community, but a big group of them were complaining against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. What a great request. God, why didn't you just kill me in Egypt? Why'd you make me walk for a month so you could kill me in the desert? There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us into this desert and to starve this entire assembly to death. When we were slaves, we had it so good. Oh, remember the good old days? Oh, get up in the morning, get beat by a taskmaster. Oh, come back, eat our little pot of meat and bread, and then have to go out and, gather straw to make bricks and get up and make bricks again and get beat by the taskmaster some more. Oh, man, we had it made. And God's like going, seriously? I've made you a nation. I've made you free, and you're going to complain that you thought you had it better when you were a slave. It says, then the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. That is key to this whole story. Every day, we're going to find out with the exception of the Sabbath. Every day, I am going to rain down bread on you. And what you're to do is go out and gather it. And you can eat it. There you go. But do it the way I tell you to do it. That's my only requirement. Is I'm going to tell you how you should gather it. And if you do that, you will never be without bread. It's that simple. So on the sixth day, they are to prepare what they bring in, and that is to be twice as much as they gather on the other days. So there's the big requirement to start off with, is for 6 days, you will go out every morning and gather this bread that I'm going to give you, but take twice as much on the sixth day, because there is going to be none on the seventh. The seventh is a Sabbath day rest. You're not going to go out and gather bread on the seventh. Instead, you're going to have plenty left over from the sixth day, and that's what you will eat on the seventh day. So Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, in the evening you will know that it was the Lord who brought you out of Egypt, and in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we that you should grumble against us? Moses also said, you will know that it was the Lord when he gives you meat to eat in the evening and all the bread you want in the morning, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we? You are not grumbling against us, but against the Lord. So Moses says, you're complaining about Aaron and I because we brought you out here and we didn't give you enough stuff. I want to make one thing clear. We're doing everything we're doing at the instruction of God. So you're not complaining against me, because who am I? I can't make this stuff happen. I didn't part the Red Sea. I didn't give you fresh water at Marah. I didn't bring you out of Egypt. God is telling Moses to say to them, if you're grumbling against Moses and Aaron, you are directly grumbling against God, because he's the one who's brought you here, and he's the one who has you in his hand. So all your whining and griping, you may be directing it at Moses, but you're actually complaining about the way God is treating you. And you would think that might wake them up a bit, but not much. So it goes on, it says, then Moses told Aaron, say to the entire Israelite community, come before the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling. While Aaron was speaking to the whole Israelite community, looked towards the desert, and there was the glory of the Lord appearing in the cloud. The Lord said to Moses, I have heard the grumbling of the Israelites. Tell them, at twilight you will eat meat, and in the morning you will be filled with bread. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God. That evening quail came and covered the camp. Quail everywhere. And in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the dew was gone, thin flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. When the Israelites saw it, they said to each other, what is it? Okay? That's important right there. They knew what quail was. Oh, look, quail. We can make this into food. This is good. Let's cook it. Let's eat it. We're all happy. In the morning, there was this dew that landed all around the camp, and when the dew went off of it, there was like these little thin white flake things all over the ground and stuff. Now, quail, they knew, this, I don't know, what is this? In Hebrew, better known as manna, which literally means, what is this? What in the heck is this stuff laying on the ground? It's manna. And so it says, for they did not know what it was. Moses said to them, it is the bread the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Everyone is to gather as much as they need. Take an omer for each person you have in your tent. He says, you can have as much as you want. This is the all-you-can-eat bread buffet that God has given you. Take about an omer or a measurement for each person you have in your tent, and that will supply you with all the bread you want. You will eat your fill. It's as simple as that. And it says the Israelites did as they were told. Some gathered much, some little. And when they measured it by the omer, the one who gathered much did not have too much, and the one who gathered little did not have too little. Isn't that amazing? Not only did they have the miraculous sign of bread being left out there, he said, if you pick it up in this way, if you use this little formula, you will never have too little and you will never have too much. That's all you got to do is just follow this simple formula. And so those who did it, they'd come back and go, maybe I didn't get enough. And they'd start making it into cakes, and they would start serving it, and they'd roast it or whatever, and they'd give it to everybody, and everybody had what they needed. Somebody else might go, well, maybe I gathered a little too much. And they would make it into cakes, and they would cook it, and they would start handing it out and go, I had exactly what I needed. So even in its being eaten, it had a miraculous twist to it. Everyone had gathered just as much as they needed. Then Moses said to them, no one is to keep any of it until morning. However, there's always a however. Because if you tell people, just take what you need, but don't keep it overnight, God will have more waiting for you in the morning. Don't try to gather extra. It'll be waiting for you. However, some of them paid no attention to Moses, and they kept part of it until morning. But it was full of maggots and began to smell, so Moses was angry with them. You see, God said, take what you need. I'm going to give you more. But they got greedy. I'm going to take extra. God said, fine. When you go to bed, everything that's left, I'm going to fill it with maggots, and it's going to stink like you can't believe. Because he said, this is what you're supposed to do. Now, why did he do that? We talked about it just a second ago. So that they would know that God is providing for them. He said, you don't have to gather extra. You don't have to hoard anything. You don't have to take and stick it away someplace, because I have told you I will have it here every morning, 6 days a week. When you wake up, it'll be there. Trust me. And some of them went, well, what if it doesn't come in time, so I'll take a little extra? Or what if God forgets tomorrow? I'll take a little extra. Or what if we run out? Maybe the other people will get up before me and they'll get all this manna and I won't get any, so I'll take a little extra. And God's going, that's not trusting me. That's not trusting. Gathering up and sticking in a storehouse is not that kind of trust. God said, trust me. Every morning you will have bread. Every evening you will have meat. You don't have to do anything more about it. Don't keep it to the next day, because every day I will provide for you. It's a matter of trust, and it was a renewal with God to them every single day. So that when they would get up and they would gather that manna, they would know God's eye is still upon them and his hand is still upon them, and they could say, see, God remembered me. Every day. Now, there are some great parallels we can draw to that. Do we get up and think about God's word when we get up in the morning? Sometimes. I'll read 2 passages today so I don't have to read tomorrow. Or I'll just wait and read it all at the end of the week. And I'm not saying that it's a formula in the same way, but I think there's some wisdom to be put in gathering our manna each day and remembering that God is there every day and not trying to store up a little bit of knowledge. I went to church on Sunday, and that preacher, he talked for a long time. I think I'm good for the week. Nah, the stuff that preacher said on Sunday, it turns pretty rancid on Monday sometimes. So don't worry about that. Go ahead and pick your own fresh stuff Monday morning. Just have that little bit of time with God. Get that fresh bread every day and let him feed you from his word every day. It'll remind you that he's there keeping his eye on you and he's got his hand on you. Each morning, everyone gathered as much as they needed, and when the sun grew hot, it melted away. On the 6th day, they gathered twice as much, 2 omers for each person. And the leaders of the community came and reported this to Moses. He said to them, this is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow is to be a Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. So bake what you want to bake and boil what you want to boil. Save whatever is left and keep it until morning. So they saved it until morning as Moses commanded, and it did not stink or get maggots in it. Eat it today, Moses said, because today is a Sabbath to the Lord. You will not find any of it on the ground today. 6 days you are to gather it, but on the seventh day, the Sabbath, there will not be any. And I've had people talk about, what does Sabbath mean? Does it mean rest? Does it mean whatever? It does kind of mean rest, but Sabbath is 7, Shabbat. That's what Sabbath comes from, is the word Shabbat. That means 7. It's the seventh day. And God declared, on the seventh day, keep it holy and rest. So that's what Sabbath comes out of, is the seventh day. Keep it as something memorial to God. It says, nevertheless, some of the people went out on the seventh day to gather it, but they found none. Moses said, don't get up in the morning. It's the Sabbath. It's Shabbat. Stay in bed, rest, read, do whatever, hang out with the family, have a nice meal, relax, because you got plenty from the day before. But they didn't listen, and they got up on the seventh day on that Shabbat. They went out and went, where's my bread? Is there supposed to be some bread out here? No, there's not. Listen to God. You know, we can look at this and go, it's just the way God did it. But this is a great characteristic of God. It was an object lesson to them. Trust me each and every day and keep that one day separate. And the people who refused to listen either wound up with maggots and stinky bread in their house, or they wound up pretty hungry on the Sabbath. Because God says, this is the way I'm going to do it. Notice, and this is going to be hard for us in the 21st century, notice God didn't say, well, maybe you didn't hear my announcement, so I'll throw a little extra manna out there on the Sabbath for those of you who didn't hear it. Or, I'll make some bread appear in your tents. Don't worry about it. I'll feed you. Because that's what we sometimes would think a loving God would do. But I'm telling you, a loving God is a just and righteous God. And when God says you gather it on 6 days and on the seventh you rest and you will be fine, he meant you gather it on 6 days and on the seventh day you rest and you will be fine. Not on the seventh, we'll talk about it. Because on the Sabbath, the Shabbat day, God said, you know what? I'm resting too. I don't make manna. I created the whole earth in 6 days. I don't need to create manna on the seventh. This is my day to sit back. And the people who did not gather on the sixth day for the Sabbath didn't have food that day. And they learned, maybe I should gather extra on the sixth day. This is the same God who said, there is one way to the Father, and that is through the Son. He didn't say, if you want to believe in Jesus, go ahead and believe in him. But if you don't want to, we'll talk about it when you get here. He said, this is the way to redemption. And there's only one way, and you need to listen. And when somebody shows up at the end of their life, and they say, I didn't believe in Jesus, but God, I think we can work something out, he's going to go, sorry, I've already made what I'm going to make. That's justice and righteousness. Not wishy-washy, okay, I'll go back on my word. That's not God. Over and over in the Exodus story, we see people punished in the wilderness. And people go, what a harsh God. No, what a just God. Because he told them, do not do this. And they would go ahead and do it, and he would say, then you will be punished. Now, if that's too harsh, then you need to go back and read Scripture. Because God says, I will give you all these different opportunities. But the law is still the law, the rules are still the rules, and justice is still justice. Righteousness is still righteousness. And so that goes across the board. When it's all said and done, God is going to do what he has said. And when he says, you know what? You know how you get to me? Through my son. And we go, nah, I choose a different way. He's going to say, hope it works out for you. Let's see how you do on your own. Because apparently you're not interested in me. Then the Lord said to Moses, how long will you refuse to keep my commands and my instructions? Bear in mind that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. That is why on the 6th day he gives you bread for 2 days. Everyone is to stay where they are on the 7th day. This is not difficult, but yet God expects them to listen. He doesn't give but if you don't want to listen, you can do this. He says, this is what you are to do. You are to stay put on the 7th day, and you are to collect extra on the 6th day. And if you do that, you're fine. No one is to go out on that Sabbath. So the people rested on the 7th day. The people of Israel called the bread manna, meaning, what is this stuff? It was white like coriander seed and tasted like wafers made with honey. That doesn't sound all bad. Moses said, this is what the Lord commanded. Take an omer of manna and keep it for the generations to come, so that they can see the bread I gave you to eat in the wilderness when I brought you out of Egypt. So Moses said to Aaron, take a jar and put an omer of manna in it. Then place it before the Lord to be kept for the generations to come. As the Lord commanded Moses, Aaron put the manna with the tablets of the covenant law so that it might be preserved. The Israelites ate manna 40 years until they came to a land that was settled. They ate manna until they reached the border of Canaan. An omer is 1/10 of an ephah. Okay. Now, you saw something in there. It might have went right on by you. It might have went right past you. You didn't even recognize it. But this is not uncommon in a Hebrew literature form like that. You can tell that this has been kind of cleaned up a little bit afterwards, because he says, Aaron, take the manna and put it with the stone tablets. But they're not to Sinai yet. See, not all of this stuff is exactly chronological, but it is historically accurate. Okay? So when he's referencing the stone tablets, we haven't got to that part of the story yet. But we have got to that part when God said, take it and put it with the stone tablets. But it doesn't exactly flow chronologically, and this is one of the big glaring things that come out at us. We have to remember that in the writing, when Moses is writing this, because I do believe that he wrote this, that he went back and he added some of these things as he was going back and saying, oh yeah, we had manna, we had it for 40 years. In the midst of that 40 years, he told us to take a jar and put it with the stone tablets. It doesn't mean the first day it appeared, we took a jar and stuck it with the stone tablets, because they're not there yet. But it means that we took some of this and we put it with the tablets in the Ark of the Covenant, where they wound up going along with Aaron's staff. But Aaron's staff isn't there yet, because we're not to the book of Numbers. So, you kind of have to go with that. But we see that this is not always exactly chronological, but it is historically accurate. And we know that God did tell Aaron to take a jar of this and put it with the tablets. It just didn't happen on that first day. So, all right. Questions or comments? How big's an ephah? Well, somebody's going to have footnotes in their Bible. Probably could answer that quicker than I could. About 10 omers. Yeah. It's about how much?
3 pounds.
About 3 pounds. There you go. Not really a mushroom, because it doesn't grow from the ground. It settles with the dew. And so it came down from heaven, and it was like flakes. In my brain, now, again, you don't have to take this. This is not from Scripture. This is from the mind of Jeff. I think of it like instant mashed potato flakes. That's the only thing I can, match to it is they would gather these flakes, and then they could work it together like dough and then make it into bread. And they could either boil it, or they could roast it over a fire, or they could bake it like bread. They could choose how they wanted to cook it, and it apparently handled any one of those ways. You may have even been able to just pick it up and eat it. I don't know for sure. It doesn't mention that. It says either roast it to fry it or to boil it or whatever. So I think that's the way that they mostly did it. But yeah, it was just kind of the way it's described in my brain is just kind of flakes. Like I said, like a instant mashed potato flake that you just could kind of work into whatever you wanted to. So probably had a little moisture from the dew in it, and Quail. He gives them quail in the evening and then manna in the morning. And the quail is pretty self-explanatory. I mean, it was just meat that he provided for them, and they went out and they could have as much of it as they wanted for dinner and eat the quail. But the manna was super, I mean, the quail was brought supernaturally, but it was a natural product. The manna was supernatural in every aspect of it, and it was to show God's provision. It was something that only they could have, only they had access to, and it reminded them that God was with them every day and going to be leading them. And it should have been that reminder when you go out in the morning and you pick up, what is it? And you pick up a homer of it and you take it back and you make it into your cakes and stuff. You would think that the rest of the day you would think, you know what? God is here today. He's going to watch out for us. But usually that kind of ended by the time they finished breakfast, I think. And then they started whining again. Oh, God left us Saturday. What? No, go ahead.
There's no place else ever that has manna
Since then, it was for 40 years, and as soon as they crossed the Jordan River on the conquest of Canaan, it quit coming. God said, I've provided you this land, and it's got food, and it's got cities, and okay, we're done with manna. And that was the end of it, yeah. We've never had any record of manna coming at any point past that, so. Yeah, after 40 years, I'm sure, you'd have to look at it that way a little bit too, I suppose. But if you think of whatever it is you really enjoy even, a cupcake or a ho-ho or something, and after 40 years of that for breakfast every day, yeah, you might have to think about, is this really what I want? Keith Green, who was a Christian musician back in the 70s and 80s, he had a song called So You Want to Go Back to Egypt, and he had one section of it talking about the manna, and he came up with all these different things that you could do with manna. And so they had, manna, and they had banana bread, and they had manna cotti, things like that. So, all right. Any other questions or comments? Or if not, those of you at home, good night.